Now you know what is prototype chain, what is prototype, and what is proto property. You also know how to create prototype chain using function constructors and ES6 classes. Also, you know that almost everything in JavaScript has prototype. For example, if you create array using bracket notation, you create instance of the array. Same with object. When you create new object, you create instance of the object. And you know that at the end of each prototype chain is object.prototype, and its prototype is null. We have just talked about ES6 classes, and you have completed several challenges. Now I would like to show you how classes are used in the most popular front-end framework, React. Of course, I will not dive too deep into React now, but I would like to show you how it uses classes. And you know that classes are syntactic sugar for prototypal inheritance and prototype chains. Okay, I have prepared example in order to save some time for typing, and let's look at it. So let's first examine index.html file. In this file, I have included references to several JavaScript files. And all of those files are located locally in this project. I have created src folder and added 3 files to it. They are material UI for some styling of React components, then React DOM and React. And I have added those scripts in following order. First I will load React, then React DOM, then material UI, and finally index.js file with some code. Okay, let's look at index.js file. And here you see code that you are already familiar with. Class, name of the class, extends, other, parent class, constructor method, render method, that is a custom method. You see here super props and so on. Everything exactly as we have discussed in this section. Okay, let me explain you what happens in this code on the high level. Here I create new class called myButton. And here below I create new element, new React element using this class. So here you see name of this class. And here as a second argument in this function call react.createElement, I pass an object that contains one property, color primary. And when I do this, props here in this class will be equal to this object. So here I am passing object with properties. Then in the DOM I find element by its ID. I am looking for button1 ID. Let's go back to index.html, and here is this div with this ID, button1. And after that, I use React DOM.render method and pass here button1, that is new element, and here as a second argument I pass button container 1. And finally, as a result of this code, I will get something like this. I will get button and some text on it. If I click on the button, then text changes to button was clicked and number of times the button was clicked. Okay, this magic happens here in this part. But let me explain this a little bit later. Now let's talk about React.component and myButton. And let's examine prototype chain for this example. Let's go back to console of the browser. Here you may see this message, download the React Dev Tools. If you want to download tools, you can navigate to this link and install extension for Google Chrome or Mozilla Firefox. And this extension helps you to develop React application. But for now, I will simply ignore this message. I will clear console and let's access here React.component. And it is a function. I can go back to code, open here this file, double click on react.development.js, and here let's look for component. Component, and I will add opening paren. And here is this function. And what is that? How do you think? That is a regular constructor function. Here you see assignments to this.props equal to props, this.context equal to context, and so on. And here you see some parameters, props, context, and updater. So, component in React, that is property of React object, is simply function constructor. And here below you see how its prototype is set. For example, here you see method setState, that is a method of the prototype of the component. And of course, this method will be inherited by all instances of the component. And so on. Force update, for example. Okay, let's go back to the console and let's, instead of react.component, use console.dir and here pass react.component. Enter, and here I will be able to see tree. Let me expand it. Let me expand this proto, and here you see what? You see function.prototype. It means that prototype of the react.component is function.prototype. And prototype of function.prototype is what? Is object.prototype. Here it is. Okay, let me scroll up, and here let's expand prototype property. Remember that this property sets methods that will be available for any instances of the prototype. And here you see such methods as forceUpdate, isReactComponent, setState, and so on. Okay, let me minify this and let me clear console. And let's now examine same information in following way. React.component.prototype. Enter. And here again you see all methods that will be available for all instances of the react.component. Let's look at react.component.prototype.constructor. What is that? It is a function. And this is equal to what? It is equal to react.component. Here is true. Let's access react.component.proto. What I will get here? I will get a function. Which function? Let's perform following check. React.component.proto 3 equals to function.prototype. Enter, and here you see true. It means that this function is equal to function.prototype. Let me console.dir function.prototype. Console.dir function.prototype. Enter, and here you see function.prototype. And this prototype has such methods as bind, call, apply, and so on. It means that react.component is instance of the function.prototype. And if I will look at the next prototype in this chain, let me copy this one, paste here, add again proto, I will get what? I will get object.prototype. If I will get next prototype, I guess you know what will be there. Proto, what is this? Null. Here it is, true. Okay, in such a way we have examined react.component. It is simply function constructor, nothing else. That's why it has prototype property and all instances of react.component inherit those methods, such as, for example, setState. And react.component is also itself instance of the prototype. And its parent prototype is function.prototype. Okay, let me clear console now and let's now look at this class. This one, myButton. myButton. What we get? We get class myButton that extends class react.component. And if I will check type of myButton, I will get a function. And of course, if I will check myButton.prototype.constructor, it will be equal to myButton. Here we get true. Let's look at the myButton.prototype. Let's expand it, and here we see several methods: constructor and render. Let's go back to code, and here they are: constructor and render. Those methods were set directly in this class. And of course, they will be available for all instances of this myButton. Okay, let's expand this proto. And here we see react.component.prototype. Let's check this. Let me minify this and let's perform following check. myButton.prototype dot proto 3 equals to react dot component dot prototype, and here I get true. That's because my button extends react dot component. Okay, but you may ask me, what about this button? Is it instance of my button or not? Let me clear console here and let's go back to code. And let's look at this part. Here I create new variable called button1. And this variable is a result of this function call. I call react.createElement. And here I pass two arguments. My button, that is a class, here it is. And second one, as we have already discussed, is object with properties for this class. For example, here you see props. And here you see reference to this .props.color. And here I pass color in this object. And color is primary for this button1. Okay, but what about button1? What is the type of this variable? Let's examine it in the browser's console. Button1, enter. Let's expand it, and it is an object. But what about prototype for this object? Let me scroll down and here expand proto property. And what I see here? I see object.prototype. It means that button1 is not instance of the my button or react.component. We can check this like this. Button1 instance of my button. I get false here. Also, I can check whether or not button1 is instance of the react.component. And here I get false as well. This means that this button1 is not an instance either of my button or react.component. But if I will expand it, you will see props property that is set to this object. Here it is. And also you see here type property. If I will expand this type property, you will see class myButton. Let's perform following check. Button1 dot type 3 equals to myButton. And here is true. It means that this class, entire class, is assigned as a property, type property, to button1. That's how it works in React. It doesn't create new instance of each component. It creates new object with such properties as type and props. And in order to tell us that this object is actually React element, this property is added to $signs type of. No worries, we will talk about symbol later on. But how you can use this property to $signs type of? Let me show you. Button1 $signs type of 3 equals to symbol dot form, and here will be string react dot element. And here you see true. It means that this button1 is React element. And here is check for it. Okay, let me clear this and let's go back to code. Let's look again at this section, this one. Here you see constructor method. It has one parameter props and it has two statements, super props and this one. You already know that this one will call constructor method of the parent class. In our case, constructor of react.component will be called. And same variable props, that is an object, will be passed to constructor of react.component. On this line, following happens. We assign state property to each instance of the myButton. And this property will be equal to this object in our example. And in our example, this object contains one name-value pair clicked quantity. And this property will keep quantity of clicks. Next, let's look at this method, render. Here we return result of the react.createElement function call. And we call it with 3 arguments. First one, second one, and third one. Here on this line I tell which element I want to create. For example, I can simply create button. Let's save, go back to the Chrome, and here regular button will be created. If I will click on it, behavior will be the same. But for demonstration of what is Material UI, I have added this syntax, and in such case, I use external React component button that is located in this library, Material UI. And I access it like this: window, square brackets, Material UI.button. What is that? Let me go back to Google Chrome. Let me clear console here, and let's access global object window. Expand it, and scroll down to Material UI. Here it is. If I will expand it, you will see a bunch of functions. For example, up bar, backdrop, and here is button. If I will expand this function, you will see that this function extends also React.component. Okay, it means that button is simply React component, and I can access it like this. I cannot use syntax without square brackets, such as Material UI, because in such case I will get error. And here is this error. That's why I can use square bracket notation in order to access this property of the global object window. Okay, what happens in this object? In this object I pass properties to this component, and they are variant, color, and onClick. OnClick is a method. Notice that here I pass color property, and color property is taken from the props that are passed here in this function call. And if I will change primary to secondary and save, you will see that color of the button was changed. And this color is used by this component in the Material UI library. Okay, let's get back and change color to primary and save. Here you see method onClick, and this method defines what happens when I click the button. And here I call setState on this. And you already know that setState is one of the methods of React.component.prototype. Let's again access it here, React.component.prototype. And here is this function, setState. That's why I can access it here and change state. And in this example, I change clicked quantity. Here is initial state, and here I change state and increase clicked quantity by 1. I take previous value of clicked quantity, here it is, and increment it by 1, and rewrite value of the clicked quantity. Okay, and finally here this last argument, this one, will be a result of this expression. Here I use the ternary operator and check if this.state.clicks_quantity is greater than 0, then I return this template literal. And otherwise I will return this string. And finally either this string or this string will be used for this button. Okay, I don't want to dive deeper into React now, but you see how simple it is after everything what we have discussed about prototypes and prototype chains and classes. And there is nothing that you don't understand here. Here is regular constructor, here is call to parent class, here we set state property of each instance of this class, here we use custom method called render, and so on. Also, in this example, I didn't use JS6 syntax that allows you to insert directly HTML sections into your JavaScript code. Also, in this example, you don't see any import or export keywords. It means that I don't use here modules. I simply insert several JavaScript files directly here in the HTML file. And notice that order here is important. If you will try to insert, for example, this file or this file before inserting React and React DOM, you will get an error. We can try this quickly. Let me cut this line, Command X, and paste it here above those two lines. Let's save, and now I will get error. Cannot read property component of undefined. That's because now React is undefined. Now I mean when this JavaScript file, this one, Material UI, is executed. That's why I need to get back to this order and save. And now you will see that if I will access window, such properties as React, React DOM, and Material UI are present here. React, React DOM, Material UI that we have already discussed. Here it is. Okay, please don't worry if you don't understand everything that I have covered in this lecture. I wanted to show you how classes are used in React and how prototype chain is built here. Okay, next you'll get a small challenge and you will need to add one more button here in this example. Task for this challenge comes next. Bye bye.